Hello. I'm Elizabeth Bonker. I am a junior in the honors program at Rollins College in Winter Park, Florida, majoring in social innovation. You are hearing a computer speak my words, because I type to communicate. Winter Park was first inhabited by the Miccosukee people, who were forced by the federal government to migrate north along the Trail of Tears. We acknowledge their suffering and resilience. I would like to recognize Ashoka's courage in asking me, someone who cannot speak, to give a talk. I hear they like taking risks. I am affected by autism and type to communicate. The same dysfunction of my motor system that prevents me from tying my shoes, or buttoning a shirt, prevents me from writing with a pen, or moving my mouth to speak to you. Please don't think that I haven't tried to button my shirt or speak. I've had thousands of hours of occupational and speech therapy. But there is a problem with my neuromotor system. Elizabeth Vossler is a speech therapist, who is also a professor at George Washington University. Her nonprofit, the International Association for Spelling as Communication, supports practitioners all over the world who teach non-speaking students to type.
Traditionally looking at it, we had a cognitive approach first, that there was an intellectual disability in people with autism. Then it's sort of switched into, well, there's a behavioral component to it, and there's avoidance or lack of motivation or lack of caring to do well, so we have to appeal at a behavioral level. But it's not an issue of I don't understand, it's not an issue of I don't want to, it's an issue of I can't make my body do it.
Keep it going. Regardless, you're working hard.
So that's why a lot of these guys are not given credit for being as smart as they are.
I know you're working hard. I know you're working hard. I know you're working. Just F-R-I-E-N and D. Because my body is not my friend.
So, what's my big idea? Communication for all. All non-speaking people with autism deserve to have a voice, to communicate. And we will start with students because we can get to them more easily through our schools. But before we go there, I would like you to better understand what it feels like to live in a silent cage. I did speak. I was born perfectly healthy. I met all my developmental milestones, and said words like ball, and dog. Then, at 15 months, something happened. And inexplicably, all of my words were suddenly taken from me. And I started to scream, and bang my head on the floor. My parents took me to Yale Medical School, and the so-called experts said they had quote good news, and bad news. Note to doctors, when you are giving devastating news to parents, there is no good news. Despite what the doctors said, my parents believed autism is a treatable medical condition. I started an intensive biomedical and educational program. I did thousands of hours of therapy, but I still had no way of expressing even my most basic needs. By the time I was 6 years old, my frustration started to boil over into self-injury. Yes. I started to hit myself. Not a popular subject for a talk, but I want to dispel the myth that equates self-injury with mental deficiency. I struck myself, because I was a thinking human, locked in a silent cage. Let's take a break in my story, to talk about just how many of us share this silent cage. We are a quiet lot, so you may not have noticed us. The Centers for Disease Control estimates that 1% of the world's 7.8 billion people are affected by autism. 1% equals 78 million, and approximately 40% are non-speaking. That's 31 million people. I bet you didn't think there were so many of us. Now let's focus on children. Autism in the United States has risen exponentially. In 1970, 1 in 10,000 children had autism. Today, 1 in 54 children are affected. Why has this epidemic occurred? Those of us with vulnerable immune systems are like the canaries in the coal mine. We've better find the answers before it's too late for millions more. Now, back to my story. My life in a silent cage finally ended, when my mother found my Annie Sullivan, thanks to 60 Minutes. Yes, that's 60 Minutes. A woman named Soma Mukhopadhyay, in Austin, Texas, had taught her own non-speaking son to communicate, by pointing to letters. We were on the next flight to Texas. I was 5 years old. So, what am I desperate to tell you? I am not special. Of course, my parents think I'm special. But my ability to type can be learned by every non-speaking person with autism. To back up my claim, I would like to introduce you to some others who type to communicate. We call ourselves typers. Meet Dan. He learned to type when he was 12 years old, and recently, the New York Metropolitan Museum of Art made a video about how art helped unlock his autism.
Once I learned to spell at age 12, learning and new discoveries poured in. Before then, because my autism doesn't allow me to speak, except by computer voice synthesizer, I couldn't even tell my parents that I'd made the most important discovery of my life here at the Met.
What was Dan desperate to tell his parents when he first learned to type?
Get me out of special ed.
Sorry, special ed. We love you, but you're wrong for most of us. Dan just graduated from Harvard. Meet Anshil. He started to type only a year ago at 19. Today, he is a junior at an all-typer school in Tampa, with plans to go to college. What is Anshil desperate to tell you?
Non-speaking does not equal non-thinking.
Amen. Just because we can't move our mouths, doesn't mean we can't think. Now, I have asked Anshil's mother to say a few words.
For the very first open-ended question of what obstacles do you face as a non-speaker, Anshil typed away, no more obstacles remain for me now. For him to wait 18 and a half years to be able to express that 26 letters is all that he needs is simply life-altering. He recently conveyed that he is living the life of his dreams.
And now, one more student. Alex was 25 years old when he learned to type, and do you know what he is desperate to tell you?
It's never too late.
Yes, Alex, it's never too late to teach a non-speaking person to type. And that brings us back to my big idea. Communication for all. All non-speaking students with autism will be taught how to type to communicate in school. Do you believe communication is a basic human right? Title II of the Americans with Disabilities Act does. Blind students have braille machines, and deaf students have sign language. Why has the American education system neglected non-speaking students? Well, that's a dirty little secret. The so-called experts who dominate special education think we have nothing to say. Thank God, experts like Elizabeth Vossler, who you heard at the beginning of this talk, and Harvard's Grace Moscola, who you will meet in a few minutes, are emerging with an enlightened point of view. Well, I had something to say when I was 6 years old and just learning to type. Soma asked me to spell a word that began with A. My mother expected apple. I typed A, G, O, N, Y. Agony. Living without a voice is agony. You see, if you ignore the body movements that we can't control, and the odd things we do to cope with sensory overload, like rock back and forth, you will discover the intelligent person trapped inside. We are hidden treasures. Students with autism need to be taught how to type, because we have difficulty initiating movements. Hell, sometimes I can't even reach for a donut, even though I desperately want one. My big idea, communication for all, is quite simple, but, like all social change, it will take a strong and dedicated coalition. We need political, educational, and scientific changemakers to make this big idea a reality. Now, I would like to introduce you to another leading changemaker, Grace Moscola, the Director of Accessible Education at Harvard, to say a few words.
Hello, and thank you for including me in this talk. For many autistic people, college is never even an option that they or their families have considered. Non-speaking students must prove themselves over and over again in ways that their non-disabled peers have never had to. Even disability services offices like mine are not always familiar with or supportive of accommodations that make course participation possible. There are attitudes and biases to overcome, questioning the authenticity of independent work, writing papers, doing research, or answering test questions. However, throughout my career, the feedback from faculty has been overwhelmingly positive, centered around the creativity and critical thinking that these students express in their work. Elizabeth's unique perspective on the world and her drive to create more inclusive communication pathways for non-speakers will open doors to higher education just like she had. Communication, just like opportunity, should be for all. Thank you.
Groundbreaking research such as this eye-tracking study from the University of Virginia validates the agency and authenticity of non-speakers who type to communicate. My life has been transformed by education. I am so grateful for my courageous aide, Terry, and for the elementary school teachers who believed in me. They are heroes in an education system that often writes off non-speaking students. These days, I have special friends like Virginia, who have made the extra effort to get to know me. I am part of a community that supports my mission. Thank you, Rollins, for producing changemakers like Mr. Rogers, who lived our motto, life is for service. With communication and education, we can transform the lives of millions of non-speaking students. And you will be amazed by the gifts non-speakers have to give to the world. Gifts of music, and poetry, humor, and love. The typers you have met today are the tip of a proverbial iceberg. Are we going to allow all of the rest of the 31 million non-speakers to melt away, or are we going to lift our voices and demand communication for all? Who knows? Maybe someone whose voice is silent today has the solution for global warming that could save real icebergs and the planet. I am one of the lucky few who have been taught to type. I am calling on you today to help me change that, to give millions of other non-speaking students a voice and a future transformed from hopeless to hopeful. Please join me in changing the way the world sees people with non-speaking autism. Let's make this big idea a reality. Communication for all. Thank you for hearing my voice.